Alaskans, wherever you are, welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. We've got a very special guest today, folks, Guy Benson. He is a Fox News contributor, host of the Guy Benson Show, and he's done a number of different things. He's coming up to Alaska, folks. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But without further ado, Guy, welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, this will be exciting to chat with you a little bit. Tell me your thoughts on Joe Biden and the economy. I'm sure you have a couple thoughts. Do you think he's doing a good job?
Well, I think along with most Americans, I do not. And this is the problem that the White House keeps running into, because he'll go out there giving speeches, as he did last week, for example, in North Carolina, kind of pretending like things are awfully good. And they'll throw a line in here or there about how we've still got, room to grow and work to be done and what have you, and prices are still a little too high. They'll kind of concede those points in a minor way, but overall, they're traipsing around the country trying to do a rah-rah Bidenomics thing that just bears no resemblance to the reality that most Americans are facing and have been facing now for years. With inflation being by far the number one complaint, the number one issue. Prices are up, 19% overall since Biden took office. And people remember what their lives were like and what things cost, a lot less overall, just a few years ago, 2019 pre-pandemic. So I think it's a risk. David Axelrod, who was Barack Obama's big guru for years, he's been really slamming the campaign, the White House, their whole approach to this, saying it is foolish to try to celebrate an economy that the American people are not celebrating. You're swimming upstream. You are trying to tell people not to believe the things that they're experiencing. And it's, I think, political malpractice. But I guess the good news for the Republicans is Biden and his team keep insisting on trying this. And we'll see how it works out for them in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the Republicans will hopefully use this to their advantage to maybe win some elections here this coming election season?
Well, I mean, they should. I mean, if you look at history and the way these things typically pan out, when you see one presidential candidate leading the other by 10, 15, 20 points on the economy, and the economy is the number one issue to voters, that's usually a pretty good indicator of where things are going. That being said, Joe Biden was in real trouble on the economy in 2022 as well. Republicans had big leads on top issues like inflation, like broad economic issues, like immigration, like law and order, crime, that sort of thing. And the Democrats still had a pretty good midterm cycle in 2022. It barely lost the House and actually expanded their majority by a seat in the Senate. So that shows you, I think, another key thing in this upcoming election. It's not necessarily about how the country is feeling overall on issues or even personalities. It's who actually turns out to vote. And the Democrats are very good at getting their people out, and the Republicans are less good at that, especially recently for various reasons. And independents, who under these types of circumstances you would imagine would break heavily for the challenger, they were roughly split in 2022 between the two parties because they weren't enamored with Republicans for various reasons. So the idea that anything would be a slam dunk for the GOP, even with some of the numbers that we're seeing, I think is at least contradicted or potentially belied by the 2022 outcomes, which is why I think it's a little tricky to make any confident predictions about what's happening in November.
So one of the things that's important for a lot folks in Alaska is energy, right? We pretty much, oil is the name of the game for our economy. President Biden has really had sanction after sanction against Alaska. What are your thoughts on Joe Biden and energy and how that's maybe been detrimental to Alaska and our economy.
Well, I mean, he's been awful, and it's the same kind of thing that he does on the Israel-Gaza conflict, where he tries to have it both ways all the time. So with Israel and Palestine, or whatever you want to call the other side, he understands, I think they understand, that most Americans very much support Israel, but this large element of their base, very loud people, go in the other direction. So whenever he does anything that might be seen as pro-Israel, they do some sort of pander in the other direction as well. And they're not making anyone happy, but they're trying to be all things to all people, and it's failing. I bring that up because in the context of energy policy, it's kind of the same thing, where you guys can go in Alaska, and the people who watch this space closely, they can go through a whole laundry list of things Biden has done that are detrimental to U.S. energy sector, to production, go down the list. But they will say, the White House, well, look, we're actually, producing more energy than ever before. So the Republicans and the conservatives are lying about us. So again, they are trying to make certain decisions to appease, again, a very loud fringe within their own base. And they will message to those people differently, saying, look at all the stuff we stopped. Look at these pipelines that we killed. Look at these projects that we've killed. Look at these moratoriums that we put in place, to say, we're with you. And then when the rest of us notice those things and say, hey, that's actually a problem, and they're hamstringing us for no good reason, they'll turn around and say, oh, no, that's not really what's happening here. They're gaslighting you. Never better in the U.S. So similar dynamic there, talking out of both sides of their mouths.
So one of the things that I think um, Alaska's pride themselves on is being independent and kind of being the last frontier where the American dream is kind of still alive. What are your thoughts on, Joe Biden? It seems like that little twinkle of the American dream, that light is quickly fading. Do you think there's still hope to regain that if a new president comes in like Trump?
Well, I think what a lot of people associate with at least the term or the concept of the American dream, this is not a catch-all. This is not totally perfect, but I think one of at least the core elements of that is home ownership. Home ownership is a huge component of what people see as the American dream, and that's just out of reach for a lot of people. Owning a home is so expensive. The costs are way up. Of course, interest rates are just massively elevated compared to where they were a few years ago because of inflation, which Biden absolutely helped fuel with all these trillions of dollars of spending that he was warned about. I mean, you had economists on his own side, like Larry Summers, very famously. Steve Ratner, I think, was another one, saying, hang on, this looks inflationary. If you're gonna be just pouring trillions of borrowed dollars into this economy, even though we've already done trillions in COVID relief, this is going to be inflationary. And the administration, the president, the White House said, oh, forget about that. It's not, don't worry about that. It's all good. Not going to happen. And if it happens, it's it's transitory inflation. And then if it's not so transitory, then we're going to blame it on, international factors and Putin and all this other stuff. I think the American dream, as defined by home ownership and the ability to build a comfortable life for yourself and your family, definitely feels like it is substantially diminished, if not slipping away for a lot of people. And look, I think we have a lot of cultural problems. To the second part of your question, I think we have a lot of problems in this country. I think we have sort of a crisis of confidence in our own values and our own goodness. And we have a lot of people who are convinced or are being convinced that we're not that great of a place. And I think we have a lot of issues that we have to confront. That being said, it's not going to be easy. It's not like all of a sudden an election goes a different way and the American dream is back and everything's great. I don't think that's true. I think we're in it for maybe a difficult slog, but policy matters a lot, obviously. And if you can improve the policies dramatically, you can improve people's lives. And I think that it's very clear that under the current president and this administration, policy is not going to get better. In fact, there's a very good chance it would get worse if he wins again. I mean, right now, think about all the stuff he's doing that's unbelievably unpopular when he needs to face voters. I mean, if he wins and the American people decide that they can't stomach Trump, they might prefer him as president in terms of outcomes, but they can't stand him as a person. So they're just going to, stay home or whatever's going to happen. And Biden wins again. I think he very well may not be president for that full term. So we might get President Kamala Harris. And either way, I think the people calling the shots inside that White House, they're going to feel emboldened and unleashed to do a lot worse in terms of policy. So that very much plays into the stakes of the upcoming election.
So have you ever been to Alaska? You're coming up, I think, this week. Have you ever been? Tell me what you're coming up for.
So I have been. This will
Nice.
be my third trip to Alaska. I was there I was actually just thinking about this. I was talking with friends about the timeline of this. I think I was up there in like 2010 or 2011 or so in Juneau for an event. And then I was back circa 2016 or 2015 for a cruise that I actually spoke on from Anchorage or that neck of the woods down to Vancouver in British Columbia in Canada, which was awesome. It's so, so beautiful. What an incredible state. Just the topography and the resources, and it's just so beautiful. And then you're right, this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, so that'll be the 8th, 9th, and 10th, I'll be back in Alaska in 3 different cities for 3 different events, one each evening, through Americans for Prosperity. So people can look up Americans for Prosperity Alaska. I know that in order to come to these events, the tickets are free, but you have to register in advance. There's an event in Fairbanks, there's an event in Wasilla, and there's an event in Anchorage. And so people can check that out online. I think there's a phone number people can text to get their free registration. So if you're in Greater Fairbanks or Greater Anchorage in sort of Alaska or Wasilla neck of the woods, I'll be there Wednesday. Wednesday is Fairbanks. I think it's Wasilla. Thursday, Anchorage, Friday, I'm pretty sure. But double check me on that. But it'll be a whirlwind tour up in your state, and I'm very excited to be back.
Well, we're excited to have you back up here. I want to be mindful of your time. Do you got any last minute thoughts here before we head off? The floor is yours.
Well, I mean, just in terms of the Alaska thought, I mean, it's like, this as well as I do. The time difference is dramatic. So I'm like, okay, I've got my radio show I'll be doing when I'm up there. I've got some other responsibilities, plus the events at night. Plus, I'm going to try to at least see a little bit of the natural beauty of the state. So it's going to be, I've budgeted something crazy. It's like 10 hours to fly up there. I think I'm going through Chicago. So it'll be worth the trip because it's not, just one-off event. It's 3. And I've never been to Fairbanks. I've never been to Wasilla. I've been to Alaska once, to Anchorage once. So I just can't wait to be up there and to see your state and to meet so many people up in the state of Alaska with my friends at Americans for Prosperity. They're a great organization. I'm very proud to be associated with them. And they were like, hey, we know it's a lot to ask, but are you at all available to fly to Alaska for 3 days for 3 events? And it wasn't even a hesitation. I was like, oh, hell yes, send me. I can't wait.
That's awesome. Well, Guy Benson, folks, he's going to be here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll put the link in the podcast description. We're excited you're coming up, Guy Benson. We wish you nothing but success. Folks, check him out. He has his own show, The Guy Benson Show. He's on Fox News all the time. And Guy, thank you so much for coming on the Must Read Alaska show. Until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska. Thanks so much.